If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge, from worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Operation Domination is underway. The ultimate game plan to dominate your NFL experience. With your hosts, Dan
You gotta be confident about your Achilles when you
Chase
show up.
Thornton,
Yeah, I mean, I got it.
Chris
Hearing
Dowhouse,
about Mr. Pointless in fantasy
and Adam LaRue. Don't hope to win. Be great and dominate.
Gobble, 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 gobble. Welcome into the Thanksgiving special, baby. We got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight because, like everybody else, we're trying to get it all content in for you to enjoy this weekend so we can go enjoy and be with our families on Thursday, too. So we got a big Week 13 preview for you. We're combining both the episodes, all right? We get the injury inquiries. We'll kick off in the first segment. And, of course, we'll get to your DFS cocktail hour, your Dynasty Temp check, your offensive observations, and last but certainly not least, your must-start sits of the week, the crush and the bust. As always, I'm your host, Dan Mater, joined with Chase Thornton and Chris D. Don't worry, Adam LaRue is going to be on his way in just a second. Thanks for tuning in live on the Fantasy Football Advice Network YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe, hit that little bell notification so you get notified whenever new content available to you. You can also check out Operation Domination Football on your favorite podcast app. Tyler Bradley in the building, pumping us up. Absolutely love it. All right, folks. So we got the Injury Inquiry episode. It's time to get our guests introduced. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. He's the #1 medical expert in all of fantasy sports. The one, the only, Dr. Brian Scott!
Get chills up my spine every time. Chills.
What's going on, Bri guy? How you be doing this Thanksgiving?
So far, so good. I'm working. I'm on call, so it could get a little crazy. But I'm anxiously awaiting some turkey tomorrow and some good food, so that'll keep me going.
Absolutely. So let's just get into it, because in case Brian has a medical emergency and he's got to dip out on us, we have our own medical emergencies we got to talk about.
Oh, 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 oh.
All right. Well, the first one is actually maybe some good news. Trevor Lawrence, is he looking to make a return this week, you think?
Yeah, it sounds like he might actually be coming back from this AC joint sprain. He's been out since week 9. First return to practice was this week, limited fashion. But we should see him back. It was just an AC joint sprain. I think he's had long enough to recover. He historically has not missed much time in his career. I think he'll make a comeback this weekend.
All right. Well, that's great news, right, Chris? Because, I mean, it's not just about Trevor Lawrence. Maybe not necessarily looking to play him, but we have been leaning on guys like Brian Thomas, who we'd like to get back going. Maybe Evan Ingram would nice to be getting him back going. Maybe the running backs could actually have a chance to score some points here. What do you expect out of this team?
I wouldn't get too excited, Dan. I think you still have Press Taylor, still the offensive coordinator, still have Doug Peterson there. And Trevor Lawrence, he should be back hopefully, but there's not a lot for the Jacksonville team to play for, so I'm a little skeptical about what they're going to, prolonged usage of Trevor Lawrence will be, especially with the offensive line. It's not so good. So I do think there is some hope, Dan, but I'm not that overly excited. I think there's a lot to still see with the Jacksonville team. Last time we saw them got beat down 52-6, so hopefully it could be better with Trevor Lawrence, but I don't know if it's going to be that much better yet.
Well, Houston has been giving up some big plays. And to answer a question we just had come in, yes, BHS Cardinal, I am playing Brian Thomas Jr. this week with confidence if Trevor Lawrence is back. Now, I normally don't do this, but we did get a question coming in here. Brent Bradford, Brian, is Brees going to play? Brian, what do you say?
Oh, we're jumping to Brees Hall. Okay. So he apparently had some type of knee issue. I've seen quotes saying it's just some soreness. Now, the big question is whether or not it's that reconstructed knee that they were referring to, and I couldn't find any reports to kind of confirm that or not. But this could be more of a precautionary move, if it is that knee. And it seems like it's a minor injury, though. He played through the entire game, and apparently this injury happened at some point earlier in the game. So it sounds like it might just be a precautionary move on the part of the Jets. I think we will see Breece Hall. If he can get a practice session in before the end of the week, I think we'll see him.
Well, let's hope so for that. All right, to switch back to the quarterback. Keep Brian on his toes here in this Thanksgiving. Brock Purdy and the shoulder saga continues.
Yeah.
What do you have on that?
Well, he did do some light throwing today during a limited session, so that's encouraging. And head coach
2 throws. That's what I heard.
Oh, is that right?
Light throwing. Yeah.
Well, that's light for you. Yeah, exactly. Whether or not he plays remains to be seen, but it's a step in the right direction. Who knows? It's kind of 50-50 right now. If he's only doing 3 throws and head coach Shanahan said it went well, I don't know how much you could take from that, but we'll have to see if he does anything on Friday and whether or not he's actually going to be a game time decision or not. I don't know. It's a mysterious injury. We're not exactly sure what it is. Some people have speculated an AC joint sprain. Not quite sure though.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a pickle here. I mean, Adam, I'll go to you on this one. If Brock Purdy doesn't play, how much confidence do you have in a Debo, George Kittle, a Christian McCaffrey even? I mean, Juwan Jennings, you name it.
Definitely.
Is Debo going to catch the ball, Dan?
No. Good. Next question.
Confidence is low. Kittle, I feel pretty confident in. McCaffrey, less confident, but I'm still starting him. I have to give him a longer leash than I would almost anyone else in this situation. But those are really the only 2 guys I feel like excited about. I'm sure there's situations where I feel forced to start Juwan Jennings, situations where I feel forced, unfortunately, to start Debo through this skid, despite the quarterback situation. But those are the 2, Kittle and McCaffrey, where I don't want to say confidently putting them in my lineup, but I am. They're going there.
Yeah, I tend to have to agree with you on that one. Brent, also in Dynasty, should I sell? Or who should I sell? I guess he's talking about. Brent, if you hang out, we'll get the Dynasty Temper Check with Adam LaRue later on in the show. All right, back to the injuries. J.K. Dobbins hurt his knee. Oh, we kind of thought this would be inevitable, but he's been getting through so good so far. It doesn't sound like it's overly serious, but Brian, what do you got on J.K. Dobbins?
Dan, I know this is your fantasy guy. He's been on the injured list for many years now since his major knee injury a couple of years ago, and I've always said tread with caution with him. I'm surprised he actually made it this far in the season before he had any issues pop up. So the big question again, just like Breece Hall, is this that surgically reconstructed knee? They're saying it's just a sprain. However, it sounds like he's going to be out at least this weekend, and I have a bad feeling this could be an extended absence. How long? Hard to say, but never a good sign when you hear J.K. Dobbins and knee injury in the same sentence.
Woof. Chase, we saw earlier in the year when Gus Edwards was out that Kamani Vidal got worked in. He played ahead of Hassan Haskins. We do expect Gus Edwards to be the lead rusher. Two things. Who is your favorite fantasy back if J.K. Dobbins is out for the Chargers? And do you think Vidal once again plays ahead of Hassan Haskins with Dobbins out this time around?
I think Vidal should play ahead of Hassan Haskins. Whether he does or not is kind of up to Haskins' Michigan buddy there in his head coach, Mr. Harbaugh. The fact that Haskins keeps playing at all is pretty much because Jim Harbaugh is the head coach and has familiarity with him, I think, at Michigan, because Haskins really has not shown much in his career to this point to warrant being out there too much. We all liked Kamani Vidal, I think, coming into the season. We like the fact that he's got a skill set we feel like can play on all 3 downs. I like him, but I don't necessarily know that they'll go to him over Gus Edwards. I think Gus Edwards is probably your starter here. But it'll be interesting to watch the usage here coming up over the next couple weeks. If, as we expect, J.K. Dobbins misses multiple weeks with this, they should be careful with him because he has looked good when he's run the ball this season, and their offense has been better, I think, for him being there. So if he misses multiple weeks, we'll want to watch that usage. I think that Vidal could eat into the workload from Edwards and could conceivably take it over. But it's kind of going to be a mess until we get that all shaken out. If I can avoid this backfield this week for sure, I want to avoid it this week just because it is such an unknown with the possible three-headed monster there.
Yeah, real quick, I want to get to the question here from Shrimp Salad. This is for Adam. Would you sell McCaffrey in Dynasty if you get knocked out of the playoffs and the trade deadline hasn't yet passed?
It depends on what you're gonna get. His value is very weird right now. I don't think anyone really wants to buy at cost or at, there's what he averages to go for, right? And there's what you can get your league mates likely to go for, and those numbers aren't going to be the same, more likely than not. So I'd feel it out if there's a contender that wants to buy. Absolutely, I would consider it. I think we're getting to a point where I think you question this San Francisco 49ers offense to an extent. I think it gets better. I think this is rock bottom and it gets better. But also with his injury history, with his age, I think he could, if you ignored the injuries for a moment, which we're going to get right back to them, I'm sure. But if we did for a moment, his skill set would age gracefully, typically, like receiving type backs and guys who have as good a vision as him do age gracefully. But with the injuries, it becomes a bit of a mixed bag. So if you want to be risk averse or rebuild, I feel you. But you need to get something legitimate back for someone like Christian McCaffrey. You can't just sell him for nothing.
Exactly. And that's going to be the hard part. Just from personal experience, I have McCaffrey in a league where I'm probably not going to make the playoffs in my Dynasty league. Guy asked me what would I want for McCaffrey, and I told him 2 first. Basically, I told him to go screw himself. But that was mostly because I had injuries that plagued me, which is why my team wasn't going to make the playoffs. So if you think you're 2 years away from getting back to a playoff spot, then maybe I'll look to sell McCaffrey for a bargain bin deal. But otherwise, I'm not going down that pattern because McCaffrey is still locked into this team for at least another season. And if we've seen anything this year, apparently you could be a 30-year-old running back and still be in prime because, everybody who's 30-year-old running back went off this year. So it is possible. Let's get back to it. Talk about running backs. Brian Robinson, ankle issue. Now, this sounded like we had a positive report today, though.
Well, there have been some mixed reports, though. Some reports were saying high ankle sprain, but then he was on a radio show today and did not say that he had a high ankle sprain and actually said he felt great compared to Sunday. And it sounds like he will be available this weekend. Now, he did have to exit the game this weekend against the Cowboys after he sprained it in the first half. But it sounds like he's making excellent progress. I think we'll probably see him get a practice session in the next 2 days here. And he might be a true game time decision and carry a questionable tag, but it's definitely heading in the right direction. Sounds like he's going to be good to go.
Well, technically today he got listed as limited, so he was already kind of back at practice, at least doing something, which is a good sign. Hey, what about his teammate, Austin Eckler? Was there anything on him with that nasty concussion?
It doesn't sound like he's going to be ready. Unfortunately, he did not do anything today and still in concussion protocol. That only gives him 2 days to get ready. It doesn't sound like he's going to be available, which is why I think Brian Robinson will definitely be available.
Yeah, so Brian Robinson is available. No Austin Eckler. We already know that means Jerry McNichols will likely play that kind of role on Sunday, making him probably outside my top 36, but more of a borderline low-end flex play of anything else. David Montgomery had a shoulder issue. That game is Thanksgiving game. So what do you got for him?
Well, so he did return to a full practice today, and he is expected to play tomorrow. That was as per head coach Dan Campbell. He seems to be pretty accurate with his updates with the media. It sounded like actually Montgomery could have returned to the game this past weekend, but they decided to hold him out, knowing they had a shortened week with the Thursday night Thanksgiving game or Thursday day Thanksgiving game. So it sounds like Montgomery is a full go. And then I'll skip ahead a little bit here, Dan, but it sounds like Amon-Ra St. Brown is also going to be good to go with that knee. Similar to Montgomery, he was probably going to be listed as questionable, but it sounds like head coach Dan Campbell is going to need him to at least do some punt returns or kickoff returns, whatever else he does outside of his receiving role. So it sounds like he's also going to be making a return this weekend.
All right, so everybody's back. And isn't it nice that the kneecap biter is actually a truthful coach when it comes to injuries? It's very hard to get. So I'm just thankful we have one coach that we can actually trust there. Yep. Moving right along, Josh Downs' shoulder issue. How long do you think this is going to be?
Well, he got injured, but he did return to the game and then got taken out again. So the team's not too optimistic, unfortunately, that he's going to be ready this weekend. He didn't get a walk in on a walkthrough on Monday. I'm not even sure if he made it onto the practice field today at all. So it sounds like he's going to be questionable at the very most heading into the weekend, but it's trending more toward him not playing.
Yeah, so a little rough there for Josh Downs. I am going to talk about Michael Pittman later on in the show. Stay tuned for Crush or Bust. Devonta Smith. Brian, you and I called this last week.
We did.
It's not looking good. What do you got with him?
Yeah, we even said it's probably going to be multiple weeks, which it looks like it's shaping up that way. I mean, he didn't practice again today, coming off that hamstring injury. He missed the Rams game this past weekend. That does not bode well for a return if you can't get at least a limited session in. But I always say you need at least a full practice session in before you really know what you're dealing with these hamstring injuries, especially after a couple weeks. So it sounds like it's going to be at least another week.
Chris, we got an interesting one here because they're playing the Baltimore Ravens, right? So it's like the one run defense that maybe can hold Saquon Barkley in check. We know A.J. Brown's a must play every single week, but what do you think about Dallas Goedert? Typically, he is the second receiver when one of them goes down. Didn't do much last week. Do you think he bounces back this week?
I think he's got a chance to. I think if you have to throw the ball, that you're going to see, Dallas Goedert has been that second guy, especially when Devonta Smith has been out for most of the times. Dotson didn't step up. Another receiver really stepped up for you to threat for B receiver. Now I do think Saquon will be utilized out of the backfield. That's another way you can attack the Ravens. The Ravens don't have Roquan Smith is out this week, so they're missing their prime time middle linebacker. So there is a way you can kind of throw the ball to running backs, but you could also attack them in tight ends. So I think Dallas Goedert's a solid play. I don't love the upside, Dan, but I think it's got a solid solid play if you're looking for a tight end option.
Yeah, I do have him in my top 9 tight ends heading into this week. Cedric Tillman, concussion that Thursday night game. Any update on him?
I have not seen any significant update on him. I think he's still in concussion protocol, to be honest.
Yeah, he definitely is, and we'll have to see if he gets any practice. So Shrimp Salad actually wanted to ask a question. Since Cedric Tillman is still in concussion protocol, would you pick up and play Dontavian Wicks with Romeo Doubs out or Vele in the same game and set auto sub? That's a sleeper thing now. You can set the auto sub now for Tillman. Chase, what would you do here? Dontavian Wicks or Devon Vele?
It's not a great choice there. I mean, if you're looking at who's probably the more consistent option lately, it's been Vele. I mean, Wicks has been really hit or miss up and down, but Wicks can be a real big swing. We know that. Unfortunately, I mean, with Watson still in the game, that kind of takes away some of what Wicks gives you. And we've seen that this year with Watson out, that they've put Wicks in that role. I would say, I mean, I'm not thrilled about either one of them, but yeah, if you want to set the auto sub for Vele, you've probably got a more consistent option. If you want to take the big swing, you could go with Wicks tomorrow night, but that's, like I said, it depends on what you think you need this week.
All right, I tend to agree. Darnell Mooney dealing with a hamstring coming out of the bye. Brian, do you have any updates on him?
So yeah, he exited week 11 with that hamstring injury, was listed as a limited participant today. Ironically, I think some of the injury reports actually had an Achilles injury listed on there. Might have been a typo. Maybe I was looking at that wrong. But with the bye week, that should have given him at least ample time to get back on the field this week and ramp up his activity. So he should be able to at least test it out before the weekend here. But it sounds like if he could get a limited session in today, like they said, and maybe get a full session in on Friday, he might make a return.
All right, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Darnell Mooney, somebody you want to play, even against a tough Chargers matchup if he's out there in the field. He's been too good this year to not. Our last player that we want to talk about for this segment, Dalton Kincaid, still dealing with that knee issue, and they're coming out of the bye. What did you find out?
He still hasn't practiced yet, as far as I'm aware, and that's not good, giving him only a couple days to prepare. You know, when you're coming off a bye and you can't get back on the practice field, at least in a limited fashion, that's not a good sign for this following weekend here.
Yeah, not really too good. Think you're going to have to pivot off of Dalton Kincaid. The good news is week 12, there's nobody on, or week 13, excuse me, there's nobody on bye. Surprise, surprise. Yeah, that's what the NFL did. Nobody on bye week 13, but everybody and their mother on bye week 14, the last game of the fantasy football regular season. Thank you, NFL, for the gift that keeps on giving. Anyway, thank you, Chase. Brian, thanks for coming on to the show. Abbreviated version, I know, but we got a lot we got to get to. We're jam-packing it in one episode. Tell people where to follow you at and what to check out coming up.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and release a new episode here with a special guest I had a couple months ago. So stay tuned for that. That will be coming out soon. And then my interview down in Greenville, South Carolina with the Green Gridiron guys. Hopefully we'll get that out next week. Got a little delayed. And then, follow me on X for updates at Injured List Pod, Facebook and Instagram, the Injured List Podcast, and of course the website, theinjuredlist.com.
Great stuff. Brian, have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope you don't have to work too hard, man, but we'll be
Try
thinking
not
about
to.
you.
I'll try not to.
All right, Brian, we'll see you later.
You find me offensive, I find you offensive for finding me offensive.
All right, gentlemen, and with that, it's time for Chase Thornton's DFS Cocktail Hour.
All right. Hey, let's get her going here, boys. It's Thanksgiving week. Hey, there's 3 games on the slate tomorrow. So we're going to give, a little different than we do most weeks. We're going to give a favorite, say, flavorful 4 here for the Thursday games this week. And then we'll let everybody else out there fill in as they see fit from the Thanksgiving buffet of every other player that's out there. So this week, we're going to be making a cranberry sauce, gin, and tonic. So let's get it going here, okay? At quarterback this week, we are going to go with Tua Tagovailoa at 6,000. Now, he's the 3rd most expensive quarterback for tomorrow, but he's been a top 8 quarterback in DraftKings scoring for the last month or so, and he's been the best of the quarterbacks who are on the slate for tomorrow in DraftKings scoring here over that last month or so, like I said. Now, Green Bay's been tough against opposing fantasy passers, and it might be cold tomorrow, but Tua's efficient, he's accurate, and he's not going to be facing Jair Alexander with all the weapons that he's going to have at his disposal. I'm willing to take a shot at that. So Tua Tagovailoa here is going to be our quarterback at 6,000, as we are going to start this gin and tonic off with 4 ounces of Death's Door here. Death's Door gin from Wisconsin, my neck of the woods.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Death's Door on Thanksgiving, baby. Let's rock it.
All right, there we go. So we got 4 ounces of that. Now, the one place the Packers have been consistently vulnerable is against their opponents' tight ends. So we're going to go back to the Jonnu Smith wagon this week on the limited slate here. He's been awesome the last couple of weeks. I think he should be able to find some holes in that Green Bay secondary. I like him even at his cost of $4,300 here. I think he's going to be a real good value for us at tight end. He's going to be, I think, the top target here against that Green Bay secondary. As, like I said, the one place they really have been consistently vulnerable in Green Bay is against opponents' tight ends there. So then at running back here, as we're going to add an ounce of simple syrup to our shaker here. Running back, we're going to go across the field from them. We're going to take Josh Jacobs from the Packers there at 7,000. Jacobs, he was a beast last week against 49ers, 3 touchdowns. He's looked really good this season so far. He's been very good, very, very good for now over a month. The Dolphins are middle of the pack here against opposing running backs, but I think Jacobs should be able to eat once again this week. It's a game that's got a forecast that, like I said, of around 20 degrees. Wind chills might be in the single digits. We did talk about Romeo Doubs is going to miss tomorrow's game with his concussion. They may want to lean on that run a little bit there against the Dolphins. So I like Josh Jacobs even at 7,000 there at running back. So now we're going to add an ounce of lemon juice to the shaker there, and we're going to talk about wide receiver. At wide receiver, we're going to go with CD Lamb for the Cowboys at 7,300. Now watch his health for tomorrow, but it looks like he's going to be good to go. Should play. Came off the injury report, it looks like. But against the Giants earlier this season, Lamb got loose for 7 catches and a score on 8 targets. He put up 23.6 DraftKings points. It was his second best fantasy game this season. Now, I know the quality of his targets from Cooper Rush haven't necessarily been as good as he was seeing from Dak, but he hasn't seen fewer than 10 targets in a game since week 5 against Pittsburgh. The Cowboys should be eager to show off a little bit on Thanksgiving. It's one of their showcase days. It's the second game of the day there. So we'll go with CD Lamb. So 4 pretty expensive options outside of Tua there. Jacobs and Lamb and Smith there are all up in the upper echelon of what you're paying for people for tomorrow. But I do think you can fill in your lineup with some cheaper options. Like I said, from that Chicago-Detroit game, I think you can fill in with some cheaper options from the Giants' rushing attack. I use attack in quotes, but they are facing Dallas, and Dallas does give up points to that position. So we will say happy Thanksgiving with that. But we've got our gin, we've got lemon juice, and we've got some simple syrup in there. Now, the secret here, or what makes it, is 2 large spoonfuls, bar spoonfuls of cranberry sauce. There's 1 and there's 2. Now, if you want to be all Martha Stewart and you want to make your own real life, out of the berries cranberry sauce, you go right ahead and do that. Have fun in the 1800s. I am going to be a good red-blooded American, and I am going to use the can-shaped, highly processed, ocean spray type there, because that's what I like better. So with that said, I'm going to shake this up here. Put that on mute so you don't have to listen.
While he's shaking it up, just real quick, we got Darren coming in with a question: Javonte Williams or Tyreek Hill? Adam, which one would you go with here coming up?
Ooh, my patience is running thin with Tyreek Hill, but damn it if that's not who I'm still going with, at least in this matchup. But it's running thin, man.
If it wasn't for the fact we have no idea whoever hell is going to touch the ball in the backfield of Denver, yeah, I would almost say I would probably not be going with Tyreek Hill unless it's Javonte Williams there.
There's like 30 backfields where the starter I'm going with over Tyreek Hill at this point. It just happens this is like the one.
It's not quite. And we got Tony C coming in. Tank Bigsby or Kareem Hunt rest of season? What do you think, Chris?
I'm going to go with Tank Bigsby for the rest of the season. I think he's got the inside track to be that, early down back in Jacksonville. Has been the more effective back in Jacksonville over ETN for most of the season. With little to play for, as I talked about, I think they're going to try to run the ball a bit more, try to hide the defense. Kareem Hunt, his days are numbered as that featured guy. He'll probably see some splits early on, but I think eventually you're going to see who the more talented back is, and that's Isaiah Pacheco. So I think Kareem Hunt is a guy that I would not rather have over Tank Bigsby.
Agree with that too. All right, Chase, what's your finishing touch?
All right, we're going to add a lemon wheel onto that. You can see it's got a nice pink color there with the cranberry sauce all mixed in there. But that's your cranberry sauce, gin and tonic. Now you can make some of these up for tomorrow or whatever. Remember, everybody out there, I know we make fun of, we kind of joke around about having to see family on Thanksgiving. But if you've got family tomorrow, if you've got friends tomorrow that you get to hang with, that's a blessing. See it as a blessing, treat it as a blessing, treat them as one. And if you don't have anybody, hey, reach out, find me on Fantasy Sports Advice Network, find me on the Twitter X machine. I'll share a drink with you tomorrow. But happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Cheers.
Yeah, because they won't be busy enough with his 10,000 kids. But with that, we got offensive observations to get to.
You find me offensive, I find you offensive for finding me offensive.
You know what I'm thankful for, Chase? I'm thankful for when I get to see good football, and that usually means good quarterback play. So the question I have for you all, gentlemen, is a simple question for this edition. I'm going to ask all of you a simple thing when it comes to quarterback. It's been very difficult. If you had not had one of the top quarterbacks, a Lamar Jackson, a Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, or a Joe Burrow, you've been kind of dicey. Maybe you had a Brock Purdy, but now he's injured. Maybe you're rolling with CJ Stroud, who's been going up and down. Maybe Russell Wilson was the flavor of the week, but you've seen him kind of cooling off as of late. So, gentlemen, I'm going to go to each of you, and I'm going to ask you to give me a strategy and also a quarterback or two that you're looking to try to target or have on your roster as we hit the most important part of the fantasy season, the playoff stretch, and then the playoffs. So, first question, like I said, is kind of two-parter here. It goes, well, when I find out when you're going with your strategy is, are you playing based on matchups? Are you playing based on the quarterbacks? Are you playing based on who the scheme is? And then maybe one or two guys that you're trying to acquire or have on your team for the rest of the season, the quarterback position. We're going to start off with Mr. Adam LaRue.
Yeah, no, that's tough. With the quarterback position, I think, look, you're looking for guys who functionally can pass the ball, right? Like, I know the run game, obviously, has been such a cheat code, but that's upside to me, right? It's upside. You gain a lot of upside by being able to run, but without being able to throw, you can get a good couple games in for sure, but it'll catch up on you real quick. So when it comes to some of these backups who are completely just being able to run, like, they're going to get figured out real quick, right? Like you have a spy and suddenly things fall apart really quick if they're going to dare you to throw down the field. And like, you see the differences in how defenses attack, say, an Anthony Richardson versus almost any other quarterback in the league, right? Like, they will let him attempt to throw down the field. Everyone else, they're playing, two safeties deep. They're really trying. They're begging you to run the ball. With some of these guys who are run first and iffy on the pass, a little bit less so. They're, all right, throw. Let's see if you can do it. So I think being able to throw at the end of the day is underrated, right? So you're looking for a confident thrower in your backup. If it's someone you're picking up on the waiver in redraft or even in Dynasty, right? Like Tommy DeVito, for all of his faults, is going to be a more confident thrower than a Cooper Rush. Not that you want to be in a position, even in Superflex, where you're starting either of them, but it is a night and day difference, and you're picking one over the other, and it's not particularly close, I don't think. Just based on upside, I know their scoring was one way instead of the other this past week. But look, Cooper Rush is just not a confident thrower down the field throughout the situation. He has CeeDee Lamb. It's going to work out sometimes. Not very often. We've seen that throughout his career, and he's had CeeDee Lamb for most of his career. But yeah, ultimately, you want guys who can throw the ball, especially this time of year.
Okay. So any guys in particular maybe you're aiming for or strategizing to get?
Look, I think as you get this time of year, an arm like Stafford, who is QB 14 on ECR, I see him on a lot of waiver wires, especially in redraft. He's someone who, last year saw the same thing. He picked it up as the year went on. He's someone in matchups, and he's a smart veteran thrower of the football, accurate thrower of the football, and great arm. When you see matchups with great fronts, you can't play them because that offensive line's putrid. We saw this past week with Philadelphia. But look, if it's just bad enough that you can, Sean McVay can find a way to cover for that offensive line, they're going to make it work. They will. And he's someone, again, who I see available in a lot of leagues. So, he's matchup dependent. Good pass rush, you can't do it. But if it's league average or worse, go get it.
All right, so we're going to look about Matthew Stafford. Dan, I'm going to go to you. Dan, Adam's kind of all over the answer with that. Part of the problem with Matthew Stafford, as he kind of talked about, is matchups. And right now at quarterbacks, people are going to hoard their quarterbacks or they're not going to give up guys, if they can get some guys. So we kind of want to, narrow it down. So what are some guys maybe you're looking at and maybe some strategy you're keeping in mind as you're kind of unrolling this quarterback's, conundrum?
Look, if you're streaming quarterback at this point, you're just looking matchup. That's it. There's no other thing to it. Okay. Maybe you can look for guys who might be in negative game scripts to up the volume, but you're just looking for a matchup and what you can get out of them. Drake May is somebody who's still widely available, still has seventh best schedule for the rest of the way, still gives you a little bit of that rushing upside and should be in a lot of negative game scripts moving forward. Outside of that, Sam Darnold is somebody who's kind of up there with the top 10 schedule the rest of the way as well. Played good the last couple of weeks. Nobody else is really going to be available, though. That's kind of the problem. Like the guys at the top schedules, maybe Derek Carr. All right. The Saints technically have the second best quarterback schedule. Are you playing Derek Carr? No, that's probably where I draw the line on just playing matchups and streaming quarterbacks right there. I'm never going to trust Derek Carr going down with that. I'm never going to trust Cooper Rush, who also has a good quarterback schedule the rest of the way.
Yes, Cowboys.
But are you guys not hearing me?
No, we got you.
Okay. But so Drake May, a couple of those guys, that's somebody who I'd be targeting the rest of the season.
All right. So Chase, going to you. Are you strategizing? Are you looking just matchups? Or are you looking at anything strategy? Like Adam's talking about looking for the quarterbacks that can throw. Or are you looking for, what kind of strategy you're doing and what maybe some names you're going to throw out and maybe you want to add on your roster?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a philosophy thing, and it depends on your scoring situation. If you're in a league where guys, get more points for rushing touchdowns, as a lot of us are, 4-point passing touchdown, 6-point rushing touchdown. If you want somebody who's a rusher who might have been given up on, Anthony Richardson has a pretty good schedule the rest of the way. Now, I don't necessarily want to put all my eggs in his basket. Based on Adam's, point about guys that can throw the football, I'm still not necessarily sure Anthony Richardson can throw the football. But if you want to look specifically at who's got some great matchups coming down the line here and has kind of been playing a little bit better, I don't like it. You don't like it. The American people don't like it. But if you're in this situation and you're looking to add a guy who's available right now, Will Levis has a crazy schedule the rest of the season. He faces the Jacksonville Jaguars twice. He has the Indianapolis Colts in week 16. He faces Cincinnati in week 15. Will Levis is a guy that, based on matchups, if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel that bad, he's got a great schedule coming up here. He's been scoring some points lately. You could do worse there, I guess, than picking up Will Levis. All things considered, though, Dan has it right where you want to be looking at who can you pick up, who's got the absolute best matchup going forward. Because if you're at that point, you're not worried about next week. This week is the only week that counts. You have to win this week. So don't worry about saving a guy for 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, especially at the most important position in fantasy, the quarterback position. So, yeah, Will Levis is a guy with a great schedule going forward. Probably somebody that's available in your league.
A good name, Jason. I think you hit the nail on the head in some of the aspects. Look, my personal perspective is there's 3 different guys that you can kind of aim for in a sense. Will Levis has come off 3 straight weeks where he had 20 points. He's a guy that's kind of trending in the right direction and a offensive coordinator and a head coach who wants him to succeed. I think that's one of the things I would take out of most of this is look at some of these guys moving forward. Like I'll throw another name out there to kind of consider. Caleb Williams had a great game versus last week for the Vikings. Looks more decisive getting rid of the ball. Adam talked about when you want to get rid of the ball and know where you're throwing the ball. You make decisive throws. You can make things happen. I point that out because it's not always matchups. There's been great matchups on paper. Sometimes that backfires on people. And I think one of the things to kind of keep in mind, moving forward, especially when it comes to the quarterback position, is sometimes it's not just about the matchups, sometimes about the players and the systems. Also, one more caveat, watch out for the weather. Chase, I love you, but I'm not playing Tua Tagovailoa at all this week. We'll get to our bust this week and soon, but weather things can really affect some of these guys. Jared Goff, we know historically can be bad outside. So it's another thing to kind of keep in mind when you're kind of going through these different quarterbacks. I know streaming always seems exciting, but it doesn't always work out just playing the best matchups week in, week out. All right, on to you guys.
Well, we got some questions we got to get through here. So and keep them coming in. We'll keep getting to them as we go. Zare here, start 2. George Pickens, DJ Moore, Tank Dell, DK Metcalf, Jordan Addison. Adam, you got that one?
Yeah. Start 2. I'm going to go Pickens in a big matchup against Cincinnati and DK against the Jets, who are just kind of trending down. Tank is interesting. Addison's interesting, but ultimately it's those 2.
All right, I like that. Here's a philosophical question, I guess. Are you guys disappointed in this year's rookie running back class, not including Bucky Irving? Go ahead, Chase.
No, I'm not yet, because I don't think we really expected a whole lot of these guys to come in and start right away. We kind of thought this was a down year for the running back class. I actually liked this running back class coming in a lot more than I think a lot of other people did in the industry. I think Bucky Irving has been a great surprise, a huge find. I think that the emergence of Chuba Hubbard in Carolina has let them, is going to allow them to be patient with Jonathan Brooks. I still think Jonathan Brooks is going to be a thing in this league. I think he's going to be a good player in this league. I still have high hopes for Trey Benson. I think he's going to be fine, but they haven't needed him. They've gotten what they wanted out of James Conner this year. Amari DiMercado's been there longer. You've seen as the year's gone on, Benson has started to take a little bit more of that workload, and Conner's not going to be there forever. We have to be patient with this year's running back class because there were not a whole lot of situations where these guys were drafted into starting situations right off the bat. But Tyrone Tracy has looked like a usable piece in New York. Looks like he should be the guy there for a while going forward. Bucky Irving has looked good. I still have hopes for Will Shipley, but like I said, Brooks and Benson, the top 2 guys in this class, weren't drafted where they should go and start. Braylon Allen looks like he could be a great back in this league, but he's sitting behind Breece Hall, who's one of the top five guys in the entire league right now. Be patient with this running back class. Don't bail on him in Dynasty. This is going to be a decent class. It's going to be a lot better class than it looks after this season.
All right. And we got another question, Chris. Don't mean to put you on the spot here, but we do have a defensive question. We couldn't get to that today. How about some defenses for the playoffs? Anybody you're targeting there?
Like, that's where the matchups can be very important, but also can blow up in your face. But right now, talking about some of the things I see on paper, Dallas does have a nice matchup going on paper as a defense to kind of consider to add. The Ravens have been up and down all season long, but they have a couple of games during a playoff stretch that can kind of consider, especially the week 1. And then another defense that people are kind of, going through this week 14 next week, hell, as Dan alluded to at the beginning of the show, that people are going to have to deal with at the end of their playoffs. Going into the playoff things. You might see some people dropping some defenses. So look for, maybe a Denver defense or a Packers defense that maybe winds up on a waiver wire.
I'll throw one out there too. Tampa Bay's defense.
Yes.
Outside of week 15 against the Chargers, they wrap it up with Dallas and Carolina back-to-back. So if you can pick them up and hold them for week 16 and 17, that might be another way to go. All right. So another flex question coming in from Darren: Bucky Irving or Amari Cooper? Back to you, Adam.
Oh, I think I want to go Bucky. The Niners are a tough matchup. We're gonna get into that a little bit later because I do have a player who I do like for Buffalo. But that notwithstanding, Amari hasn't played a ton for Buffalo, and that being a tough matchup, I'd just rather avoid it.
All right. George coming in needs to start 2 wide receivers, non-PPR: DJ Moore, JSN, Marvin Harrison, Jalen Waddle, DeAndre Hopkins, or Amari Cooper. Chris, what do you think?
Ooh, I would probably go with Marvin Harrison is the guy who has one of the upsides. He's the guy in the red zone. Not the tight ends never catch touchdowns, so Marvin Harrison has a chance to maybe catch one. And then I probably would go with I'm going to go DJ Moore. I know that DJ Moore hasn't necessarily got down the field for you, but has been heavily involved as more late with Thomas Brown, especially in the screen game. So I think you're going to continue to see him involved one way or another. So I probably, of those guys, DJ Moore is the other guy I'd probably have in my lineup.
That's the key with DJ Moore right now. With Thomas Brown taking over the offense, the fact they're getting DJ Moore involved in the screen short passing game, not telling him just go down the field, not having Caleb go through too many reads, that's going to benefit guys like DJ Moore the most. And they got a nice matchup here against Minnesota. So I was glad you said that one. I think most people right now, ECR-wise, are looking at JSN. And while, yes, the Jets have been kind of middling in the defense, they've still been pretty tough against slot wide receivers there with Michael Carter.
Number 2 gets the pass, too, still.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I do like DJ Moore actually ahead of JSN, and I'm with you on Marvin Harrison there. George came back. Someone offered me CMC and Jaden Reed for Jahmyr Gibbs and Hopkins. Thoughts? My other running backs are Barkley and Bucky. Chase, would you do this deal?
CMC and Reed. They're going to give you CMC and Reed, and you're going to give them back Gibbs and Hopkins?
That's the way I'm reading it, yeah.
I hate giving up Gibbs, but Hopkins is aging out there. CMC is still a big-time weapon in Dynasty. Reed, I like going forward.
Well, I don't know if this is a Dynasty question.
Is it a Dynasty question? Yeah, if it's a Dynasty question, I'm taking it. If it's not a Dynasty question, I think I'm hanging on to Gibbs and Hopkins just for the rest of the year. Reed's been too inconsistent. Hopkins hasn't been the picture in consistency either, but I'm afraid of what's going on there in San Francisco. They haven't been what they need to be. There's always the possibility CMC gets re-hurt, and Gibbs has just been too good. If it's not Dynasty, hang on to Gibbs and Hopkins. If it's Dynasty, I think, honestly, I would take the trade.
All right, there you go. I'm with you. I was reading that as a redraft question, and there's no way I'm giving up Jahmyr Gibbs right now.
No.
Shrimp Salad, one more question before we get to Adam's segment. Flex 2, Chubb, Evans, Jaden Reed, Mooney, Tillman, and Njoku. Chris, take this one away.
Yeah, I'm going to illuminate 2 of you with Mooney and Tillman's injury concerns. I wouldn't play either one of those. I'm probably going to roll out here with Mike Evans for sure. It's going to be my lineup. I think given another week of healthiness, he looked just fine last week with me. He's priority number 1 for Baker Mayfield. And then I'm going to go with David Njoku. This one's a little hard for me. I think Jade Reed could have a decent game. It's always hard with those Packers receivers, which one's going to get involved. But I'm going to go with Njoku, who's been a guy who's been heavily targeted by James Winston, a guy who that without Tillman could be one of the other featured receivers in that passing attack outside the other outside Judy. So I'm going to go with those 2.
And as a tight end has the better matchup than the wide receivers do, playing as a Denver Broncos secondary right now, too. With that, it is time for the Dynasty Temperature Check.
Hot air. So hot in here.
Yes. This is a fun week for doing the Dynasty Temperature Check. And it is fun because we're going to talk about some guys who are... if you're rebuilding, you're probably getting them off your team. And if you are, a contender, you're probably buying them, right? Because I didn't over-bias this. This is just, look, those are the trades that are happening this time of year. So, on the trade database, that's what's most popular. So that's what I'm going to give you.
David Moore?
But it's fun because, these are the moves that can win you championships, but these are also the moves that, you put your eggs in the wrong basket and it can really screw you over down the stretch when you were so close, when you were making a push. You put your eggs in the wrong basket and suddenly you skid out at the last minute. So we're going to hopefully help you make the right decision here towards the end. We're going to start off with the quarterback who I talked about. Maybe you can tell me if I'm nuts. But that's Matthew Stafford, who is the 5th most traded quarterback currently, 46th most traded player. But really in Dynasty, quarterbacks are hard to move. Trust me, I lost one of mine, Dak, in a super flex like a month ago. And I've been trying my damnedest this whole time, and I cannot get a new one. So Matthew Stafford, again, 5th most traded quarterback, 46th overall most traded player. At the ECR, he is the QB 14 this week. Keep trade cut, he is the QB 27. Some example moves that we've seen in the database with Matthew Stafford are Matthew Stafford for Xavier Legette and Tyrone Tracy. Matthew Stafford for a 2025 second straight up or a 2026 first. Or Matthew Stafford plus Cortland Sutton, so the both of them, for Trevor Lawrence. If you want to, go get a maybe more long-term quarterback and send some assets off to a contender, or vice versa, that could be an option for you. So Chase, what do you think about Matthew Stafford, and what do you think about some of those trades at those values? If you are a contender, maybe you lost a quarterback, like I mentioned in my situation, Dak, or maybe you're missing Purdy, and these are some really important weeks, especially for seeding, maybe fighting for a bye. Playing some of the better teams in the league. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about this earlier with the offensive observations and looking at quarterback, options for the rest of the season. Stafford's a good option. I'll tell you what, if I could give somebody Trevor Lawrence and get back Matthew Stafford and Sutton, if I'm contending right now, I'd rather have Matthew Stafford the rest of the season than Trevor Lawrence. And even long term, I'm not necessarily sold on what we've seen from Trevor Lawrence so far. And if I can get Sutton back as well for him, that sounds like a decent trade for me. Stafford, he's getting older, but yet he's still in that offense that we know can score some points. I think that, if I'm contending, and if I've got some problems going on in my quarterback situation, if I'm relying on Will Levis, let's say, or if I'm relying on some of these guys, or if I've got CJ Stroud as my number one and he's been up or down, he hasn't been that great this year fantasy scoring wise, I would be jumping all over Matthew Stafford. I think he's got possibility for the rest of the season, and I think he's got possibility going forward. I don't think he's done yet. They don't have a ready-made, backup behind him that they want to hand off the reins to, I don't think. I think Matthew Stafford's going to be around a little while. Quarterbacks can live till they're old. Yeah, I'm in on Matthew Stafford. I'm in on taking him.
Probably be in Cleveland in 5 years.
Right.
He's got the arm to throw up there in the AFC North, although they may be getting a dome anyway, so it may not matter. Chris, don't go too far. I'm going to come right back to you with wide receiver Mike Evans, who is not only the most traded wide receiver, he's the most traded player overall, being an older wide receiver just coming back from an injury, especially in the legs where he's had some injuries before. He is the ECR wide receiver 9. We've got a big disparity here. ECR wide receiver 9, keep trade cut wide receiver 37. So those over on keep trade cut, not high about his dynasty prospects, but hey, hell of a player right now. For some example trades for Mike Evans, Chris Godwin straight up, ironic there, right? The teammate himself. So Chris Godwin straight up, and I actually saw that one multiple times. I saw multiple either 1 or 2 seconds. Also depends on the year, like a 2020 or 2 2026s or a 2025 second. Different combinations there. Mike Evans plus a second for Jonathan Taylor is another one that I saw, or plus Darnell Mooney for a first. So with that evaluation on Mike Evans, I know you love a big alpha wide receiver. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Well, first, Adam, I feel like the dynasty community's hated on Mike Evans since like the last 5 years, since turned like 26, 27. They're like, oh, he's old, he's slow already. So he continues to dominate when he's healthy. He continues to be Baker Mayfield's alpha number 1, as I talked about earlier. So I definitely am not taking Chris Godwin, his teammate, over him for sure. The other picks, I'm not trading a second rounder pick for him this receiver draft class is not the best receiver draft class coming up. Next in 2 years, it could be a better class. 3 years would be awesome class for sure. But it's going to be a little bit wild till we get some receivers. So this upcoming year, like I said, there's a little bit of depth, but not a lot of guys that are upside. So I'm not trading for the second rounder. And I think that I'm looking for, if I'm moving Mike Evans, I'm going to sell high at him. I'm not going to come off an injury and sell him. If I'm going to be buying from Mike Evans, I definitely think he's a guy to kind of buy. I think he's got at least another year next year to be good, and then at least another good 2 years to be a solid pro. So I think one of the things about Mike Evans is he was never reliant on his speed. This isn't a guy who's blowing by people, but this is a guy who's a great route runner, a guy who knows how to use his body tremendously, can catch the ball, always be a red zone target, which ages very well. So I put all those things together, and I think Mike Evans is a guy that I'm definitely not going to move for most of those trades. And if I'm going to buy Mike Evans, I think it's going to be something that I definitely would consider moving some of those trades that you talked about, a second rounder in a heartbeat.
Sure. I definitely tend to agree. I think Mike Evans is a little undervalued on the dynasty side. Dan, coming to you as our NFC West aficionado, James Conner, who has not gotten a whole lot of touches over the last 2 weeks, but 2 weeks ago was still an RB1 despite low touches, has been kind of feast or famine in terms of those touches and in terms of efficiency, but has had a pretty solid fantasy year on the whole. Tough matchup this week. We can kind of ignore that because this is Dynasty. This is about the entire push and kind of going forward. He is a 29-year-old back. But, we've seen a couple running backs hang on a little bit longer recently than expected. So, anyways, James Conner, most traded running back, fifth most traded player overall. ECR running back 20 this week, partially because of that bad matchup against Minnesota. Keep trade cut running back 26, so not a very big disparity there. Some example trades for him straight up. We got a couple of tight ends: Kyle Pitts, Mark Andrews, a 2026 second, a 2027 first, or James Conner for Demario Douglas and a second. So what are your thoughts on some of those trades? Are you in the market for a James Conner if you are a contender at this point?
Oh. So I thought you were going to phrase that question the other way. I thought it was going to be if I'm selling off James Conner. If I'm looking to buy, because that is hard. Arizona's got a really nice schedule, especially for running backs in the playoffs. And Trey Benson is not
agreed on that, but where he's gotten off of one of the worst schedules, just to be clear. He's had a tough sled to start the season. Yeah. And now we're in the clear.
Yeah, now we're in the clear. Well, that's what I mean. Like the rest of the way here, if I'm so you're telling me if I'm looking to offer up any of this to buy James Conner for a playoff stretch, my answer is probably yes. I know Trey Benson's been working in a little bit more, but Connor's still the lead back in 2-minute drill. He's still getting the majority of the targets, even over Demercado. We know he's still going to be the closer when they get in those situations. This week is like the last rough week he has, right, against the Minnesota Vikings. After this, he's got a great schedule the rest of the way, and we know James Conner can finish strong. I'm not giving up a tight end, okay? And one thing in Dynasty, it's incredibly hard to get yourself a tight end. So I'm not giving up Mark Andrews, even though he's been disappointment. I'm not giving up Kyle Pitts. But if I could give up a 2026 second round, if I can give up Demario Douglas and a second round pick, that's something I'm going to entertain. I'm never going to trade away my first rounders for old running backs. This is never going to happen. But I would pull the trigger there on the second round pick if I'm looking to make a run this year.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm with you. But hey, that'll do it for me. I think we're going to be talking about James Conner and company here in a few minutes. So definitely go ahead and stay tuned.
Absolutely. And before we get to that, we got another question coming in from Tony C here. Tua, Stafford, or Jared Goff, which one would you start this week? Which two would you keep rest of the season? Good, Chris.
Ooh, I'm going to go with Stafford and Tua. While I don't like Tua this week, I do like a couple of Tua's matchups, particularly in 2 weeks. And then Matthew Stafford, as Adam talked about, is the quarterback I trust the most throwing the ball, has the weapons. It's just a matter of protection now, and Sean McVay getting back to coaching again. So I would go with those two.
I tend to agree. All right, and with that, it is now time for your crush or bust of the week.
And I'll crush you like a paper cup.
All right, so this is where we tell you what our must starts are, what our must sits are. Who we loving this week? Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, the one guy who I'm willing to play against your 49ers is Khalil Shakir. I think it's the archetype of wide receiver that has done pretty well against you. Your guys like JSN, the slot guys, but slot guys that can move all over the place, can run routes at all levels of the field, and a quarterback who's going to throw it to all levels of the field. I don't think you've played a passing attack quite like what Josh Allen and them has going, and the production for Khalil Shakir, one, has been pretty good over the last month. But I think what's better than the production over the last month is the usage, how he's getting used. He's running routes at all levels of the field. He's getting moved around all of the field. He's playing on the outside. He's playing on the inside. He's running in, out. He's not there's a lot of receivers around the league right now that are very static. They're running a lot of the same routes, and he's not one of those guys. He is someone that has the trust of the coaching staff to run the full route tree. And with that, with an elite quarterback, and with the current trajectory, of your 49ers, he's the guy that I'm willing to play into a rough matchup out of the wide receivers in that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that it?
Yeah, that is. We're good.
Ended it on that one.
Yep.
I'm going to do you one better. Lenore might not play. Cornerback for the Niners. Nick Bosa's probably not going to play again this week. We still haven't seen Charvarius Ward be able to make his comeback with his sabbatical. Not only is Shakir a must play, Amari Cooper might be a must play by the time it's all said and done. We get the injury reports on Friday. I'm just saying, must play all Buffalo Bills. Must play Keon Coleman, who might not even be out there. Just play them all this upcoming Sunday. I'm going to tell you that right now. All right, Chris, let's go to you, man. Who you crushing on this week?
My crush is Mr. Tony Pollard, a guy that Dynasty people had hated. Not Dynasty fans people had hated going into the season, except for some of us. But it's the guy who's taking over the backfield. Tajay Spears is out again this week, more than likely. Whenever he's been out, we've seen Tony Pollard be the man in the backfield, over 20 touches, over 100 yards every time that Tajay Spears has been out. A guy who has a decent matchup again this week. I love Tony Pollard. I think ECR has him 20. I think Tony Pollard's a must start this week.
Yep. I like that one a lot, especially if Tajay Spears does, in fact, miss. We know he gets all the bulk of the work. Chase, who you loving?
Hold on, Chase. Also, Chase, another question for you, too, I think here. And what are you pairing with your fantasy win? Bourbon, whiskey, or brandy and old-fashioned?
Listen, I'm from Wisconsin, so the only answer is brandy right there. Now, I'm holding up Driftless Glen. Now, normally in Wisconsin, we use Corbel. Corbel sells more brandy in Wisconsin than anywhere else in the world for them. But yeah, definitely going with brandy here because a brandy old fashioned sour is the way I like it. But brandy old fashioned is the only way to do it in Wisconsin. Ask for it anywhere else, they'll use whiskey, but it's brandy.
What are you, 100-year-old brandy? What are you kidding me?
Hey, welcome to Wisconsin, buddy. Hey, it's not like we don't know how to drink here either. I mean, it's kind of what we do.
No,
you'll
clearly just
what the hell else is there to do? There's not. I mean, we live where we live. Sorry, but and you know, yeah, we're definitely quantity, but I believe we're quality as well. But all right, so hey, my crush this week is Bucky Irving of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I am loving Bucky. We've talked about some running backs this week already. He's running back 16 overall right now in ECR, but he's going to be my running back 13 this week. He finally outsnapped Rachaad White this year for the first time coming out of the Bucs week 11 bye. He averaged 7.2 yards per carry last week. He caught all 6 of his targets. Now, I know some people have been scared off of the Buccaneers backfield because it's Bucky and it's Rachaad White and Sean Tucker vultured his second touchdown of the season last week. But don't be scared off of this Buccaneers backfield. This is a top 5 offense in the league right now in terms of scoring, in terms of yards per play. They're top 10 in rushing. They're top 10 in passing yardage. And listen, outside of the Chargers in week 15, they have a great fantasy schedule going for the rest of the season. This is an offense you want to be buying into and taking advantage of right now, not shying away from. Since week 7, both Bucky Irving and Rachaad White have been either an RB1 or an RB2 play every single week outside of Bucky having a subpar showing against the Chiefs in week 9. But they've both been usable running backs every single week. And Bucky had back-to-back top 6 showings here the last 2 weeks, okay? They're using Bucky all over the field, too. They've given him the most looks inside the red zone on their team. He's seen 1.5 opportunities inside the 20 to every 1 opportunity for Rachaad White. And when you get close to the goal line inside the 5, that ratio still holds true. So it's not like it's been Rachaad White's thunder to Bucky Irving's lightning or whatever. In fact, if anything, they've used Rachaad White more in the passing game than Bucky Irving, when we kind of thought it might have been the opposite. So as for Sean Tucker, I know that we're all scared off about him, but outside of week 6, when Rachaad White didn't play, Sean Tucker hasn't even been anything close to a limiting factor here for either one of those top two running backs in Tampa Bay. Sean Tucker had a great week 6, and yes, he vultured a touchdown last week, but I just told you, even with him in the mix, the two of them are top running back 1, running back 2 type plays. They're top 24 type plays every single week. This week, they're facing a Carolina defense that gives up the most fantasy points to opposing running backs. I'm firing up Bucky with confidence. I'm not shying away from Rachaad White either. And hey, shake and bake, baby Baker Mayfield, but fire up Bucky Irving this week. He's my crush.
You can't argue when he's playing against Carolina Panthers. All right, so let's get to my crush of the week. And I had to give this guy a shout out because he's been pretty much on my bench in my rankings. Don't want to play him almost the entire season. This is the first week where I'm actually going to play this guy with some confidence. Like he's still not my top 24, but I'm talking about Michael Pittman here. ECR's got him at wide receiver 38. I have him at wide receiver 28. I do think he is a mid-level wide receiver 3, should at least be a flex play if you play with 2 wide receivers in your leagues. No Josh Downs, so there should be some target consolidation. Yes, he still has an Anthony Richardson problem. No doubt about it. They're going outside to play the New England Patriots this week. It's going to be actually a decent weather. They're not calling for snow, not too much wind. It's going to be like 45 degrees. We should be okay. Over the last 2 weeks, even with Josh Downs on the field, the Colts have or Richardson, I should say, has targeted him 29%. That's a really healthy target share. That's something he wasn't seeing early in the year with Anthony Richardson. He's made a point to go after and get Michael Pittman involved. And you're going up against the Patriots, who have allowed the 10th most points to the wide receivers. I mean, Christian Gonzalez, supposed to be their shutdown corner, hasn't shut down a shadow this year. So Michael Pittman is somebody I think you can play with confidence this week, at least as a wide receiver 3 or as a flex play. All right, so with that, let's wrap this thing up with our busts. Go, Adam.
All right, so I'm breaking the rules here a little bit. I was struggling. The ECR is starting to lock in a little bit. But I will say this: ECR has moved Joe Burrow down. You play Joe Burrow. I'm not going to tell you to not play Joe Burrow, but boy, you don't feel good about it this week. Like not even close. Joe Burrow is on the cusp of that. Like if he wasn't Joe Burrow, you're not playing him, because this Steelers pass rush is an order of magnitude better than the Philadelphia Eagles pass rush, and that was really what killed him that game. The defense gave up on him, that's for sure. But the 2 best pass rushers the Bengals have played this year are the Cleveland Browns and the Philadelphia Eagles. It is no coincidence that the 2 worst by far fantasy and real life performances from Joe Burrow this season are those 2 games. I'm sorry if you have a pass rush like what the Steelers have, and you were able to take that against this Bengals offensive line, especially in the AFC North, especially in sub-freezing temperatures. I'm sorry. You're starting Joe Burrow, but be very well prepared for him to score in the teens, which is fine. That is survivable, but just know that you might want to have some upside prepared in other positions with that in mind, because the 30-point Joe Burrow might be back next week, but it's not this week. It's just not.
Oh, man. Joe Burrow going down. There goes Joe Frazier. All right, so Adam's not loving Joe Burrow for a ceiling play this week. Chris, who you busting on this week?
In a similar vein, I'm not necessarily saying you can't play this guy, but I'm definitely not loving the ceiling, and I am a little bit concerned about what you're going to have for your floor. Devon Achane has been a guy who's been heavily involved for the Miami Dolphins offense. They throw the ball to him, they run the ball, but it's not the same Devon Achane we've seen in the past. He's not quite as explosive. We've seen the yards per carry go down. We've seen the yards per reception go down. We're not seeing all the touchdowns. And as Chase talked about earlier in the show, it's going to be feel like it's sub-degree temperatures in the Green Bay. It's going to be very cold. Speed doesn't necessarily play very well in the cold. Neither do guys weighing 180 pounds. Adam knows this from our previous shows. I always advocate now it's time to add yourself a big running back because usually their guys pay off come the playoff stretches when it gets cold. Well, Devon Achane is not that kind of back. Miami Dolphins offensive line is not a physical offensive line. It opens up holes. I have grave concerns with Dolphins team in general. I have other concerns with Devon Achane as RB6 for ECR this week. I do not think he's going to be one of the top guys you want to have in your lineup this week.
180. Did you put a 45 pound on his back? That's a little generous. Chase, what do you got as your bust of the week here?
Yeah, I might be cheating a little bit, but any Arizona Cardinal not named Trey McBride is on my bust list this week. This really should be a better offense than it has been overall fantasy-wise this year, it feels like. James Conner's been usable this year, and he's proving that his hot finish to last year wasn't necessarily a fluke, but he has yet to score a receiving touchdown on the year. Marvin Harrison Jr., I know we talked about him earlier. I know you guys like him. Yes, the Vikings give up a ton of points to opposing wide receivers. But listen, he's shown flashes, but he has not been that target monster that a lot of us thought he was going to be. And, the future's still bright there, but he hasn't been everything that we thought he would be. Michael Wilson hasn't been any better than a dart throw this season. Greg Dortch has been unusable. The offense just hasn't done a whole lot this year. And Kyler Murray has only had one instance this season where he's been a startable QB1 in back-to-back games. That was week 7 and week 8. He was QB7 and he was QB12 in back-to-back weeks. Otherwise, he has gone from being a QB1-ish to being like QB24, QB31 1 week. And the frustrating thing is he's been really efficient this season. He's actually averaging his highest yards per carry of his career. He should finish with his second most rushing scores in a season. He's been effective when he's run. But the problem is he's rushing at the lowest rate of his career by far. He's doing fewer than 4.4 rush attempts a game. You contrast that to his first 4 years in the league. He attempted between 6 to 8 rushes a game. He has his second highest passer rating for a season this year so far. He's averaging his second highest yards per pass. He's been good, but his top receiver is his tight end, and his tight end, by the way, still doesn't have a touchdown on this season. It's all averaged out to the fact that Kyler is having his worst fantasy output per game so far in his career this year. This week, Arizona is facing a Viking defense that allows the second fewest points to running backs, the 12th fewest points to opposing quarterbacks. I know they give up a ton of points to opposing wide receivers, but I just told you, Marvin Harrison doesn't see the ball enough to make a consistent difference. Now, as I said, McBride has held strong this year, even without scoring a touchdown, so I still like him. He's too consistent to bench, especially at that tight end position, but I am steering clear of this offense this week if I can get points from anywhere else. Lesai.
All valid points there for sure. So this one might hurt you, Chase. My bust guy, one of your Green Bay Packers, is Jayden Reed. So I'm having the same dilemma with him I had with Jalen Waddle a few weeks ago, where he keeps getting ranked as a starting wide receiver. RCR's got him ranked at wide receiver 24. I got him at wide receiver 33. I'm probably going to push him down even lower than that before that game kicks off tomorrow to get him outside my top 36, because he's a guy I'm completely fine with benching, not just this week, but until they get him back involved in a regular rotation, maybe even the rest of the season. I mean, he's been ice cold. Only one.
Dan, real quick. I don't mean to cut you off. The ice cold part, do you think there's anything with him getting touches in the outside catching the ball that could be effective for him in the cold weather tomorrow? Because that's where I like Jayden Reed.
No. And I'm going to get to why in a second. So he's only at one top 20 finish in the last 5 games. Other than that, he's been wide receiver 38 or worse. 3 of the games, he didn't even finish inside the top wide receiver 50. He hasn't had more than 6 targets since week 4. And he's been under that mark more times than not since. If Romeo Doubs misses, guess what? Dontavian Wicks steps in. It doesn't affect Jaden Reed's role at all. There's not target consolidation there for his favor. And here's why, Chris, it's not going to matter. The Dolphins defense has played particularly well against slot wide receivers, and they've allowed the least amount of fantasy points to the wide receivers so far this season. He's actually projected to see Jalen Ramsey more so than any other cornerback on the other side of the secondary. At best, he's a boomer bust. Yes, it only takes one play. He's a quality player on a quality offense. That's the only reason why we have to keep flirting with him. I think it's a wide receiver 3, but the idea that you should lock him in as the top 24 receiver is ridiculous, and I would look for other options this week.
Well, and to Chris's point about like, oh, well, it's going to be cold. He might get the ball other ways. Jaden Reed, for all the talk about being Deebo Samuel light or whatever the hell everybody wants to make him out to be, he has not run the ball more than twice in a game all season. Yeah, he doesn't see the ball enough to be consistent. It frustrates me because I think he's a weapon, but they just don't get him the ball enough in any way, shape, or form. So I'm completely with you on this one, Dan. It doesn't break my heart because I just know it's coming.
Just like I know the 49ers are going to get their asses stomped on Sunday. All right, so with that wraps up our Thanksgiving special. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. We'll be back next week at 9:30 Wednesday on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and check out Operation Domination Football, your favorite podcast app, especially while you're going down and seeing your families there on the long road trips ahead. Everybody, good luck this weekend. We'll be back next week. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you.
Cranberry sauce. Hell yeah.
That's a good way for the end cap because I'm so